The rain came down in relentless sheets, drumming against the pavement of Lexington Avenue, turning the cracked sidewalk into a slick, uneven mess. Streetlights flickered, their dim glow barely illuminating the worn-down buildings that lined the street. It was late, past midnight, but the diner's neon sign still buzzed in the darkness, casting a warm, inviting glow on the otherwise deserted street. Inside the diner, Naomi Carter wiped down the counter, exhaustion settling deep into her bones. She had been on her feet since noon, covering both the lunch and dinner shifts. Her paycheck barely stretched far enough to cover rent, let alone medical bills for her mother, but she refused to let life's hardships rob her of her kindness. That's why, when she glanced out the foggy window and saw a frail boy in a wheelchair shivering in the rain, she didn't hesitate. The sight of him, so small, so vulnerable, ignited something in her chest. She threw down her rag, rushed to the door, and stepped into the storm. "Hey, sweetheart," she called gently, crouching in front of the boy. His dark eyes widened in surprise, then fear. "You're freezing out here. Why don't you come inside? I'll get you something warm." The boy hesitated. "My dad said to wait here." His voice was soft, barely audible over the rain. "Where is he?" Naomi asked, glancing around. The streets were empty except for a few distant headlights. The boy shrugged. "He'll be back soon." Naomi bit her lip. She had seen too many lost and abandoned kids in this neighborhood, left behind by people who were supposed to love them. She wasn't about to walk away. "You can wait for him inside," she said firmly. "Come on, I'll get you something to eat." The boy hesitated but nodded. Naomi gently pushed his wheelchair inside, her heart aching at how cold his tiny hands were. Across the street, from the warmth of his luxury car, a man watched every move. His sharp, calculating gaze never wavered. That billionaire was the boy's father. And Naomi's act of kindness was about to change her life in ways she never imagined. At this hour, except for a trucker nursing his coffee in the corner. Naomi led the boy to a booth by the window and grabbed a towel from the counter. "Here, dry off a little." She draped it over his shoulders, offering him a reassuring smile. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Elijah," he mumbled, his fingers gripping the towel tightly. "That's a strong name," Naomi said warmly. "What do you like to eat?" Elijah hesitated, as if afraid to answer. "It's okay, honey. I got you." She winked. "How about some pancakes?" His lips twitched into a small smile. "Pancakes sound good." Naomi went to the kitchen and quickly made a fresh stack, adding extra syrup. She placed the plate in front of him, watching as his eyes lit up. "You like them?" she asked. Elijah nodded, his mouth full. "These are the best I've ever had." Naomi chuckled. "You must not eat pancakes often." Before he could answer, the diner's door swung open. A tall, imposing man strode in, his expensive coat dripping with rain. His sharp jawline was set in a tense expression, and his piercing blue eyes swept the diner before landing on Elijah. "Dad!" Elijah swallowed his last bite and wiped his mouth hurriedly. Naomi tensed. This was his father. The man's gaze flickered to her, assessing. "You brought my son inside." His voice was deep, smooth, but laced with authority. Naomi straightened her shoulders. He was cold and alone. "I wasn't going to leave him outside in the rain." Something unreadable flashed across the man's face. Then he turned to Elijah. "Are you okay?" Elijah nodded. "Naomi made me pancakes. They were really good." A beat of silence passed. Then, unexpectedly, the man extended his hand to Naomi. "Matthew Sinclair." He introduced himself. She hesitated before shaking it. His grip was firm, his skin warm. "Naomi Carter," she said. Matthew nodded, studying her. "You have no idea who I am, do you?" Naomi frowned. "Should I?" A small, amused smirk touched his lips. "I own Sinclair Industries." Her breath caught. Sinclair Industries was one of the largest companies in the country. Matthew Sinclair wasn't just rich. He was one of the richest men in America. And she had just fed his son pancakes. The next day, Naomi was still processing the strange encounter when the diner's manager pulled her aside. "There's a man outside asking for you," he said. Her stomach flipped. She stepped outside and found Matthew Sinclair standing by a sleek black car. "Mr. Sinclair?" she asked cautiously. He nodded. "I wanted to thank you for what you did for Elijah last night." Naomi shrugged. Anyone with a heart would have done the same. "Not everyone would have," he countered. Then to her shock he added, "I have a proposition for you." Naomi blinked. "Oh, what?" "I need someone to care for Elijah. His mother passed away and my work keeps me busy. He trusts you." Her heart pounded. "You want me to be his babysitter?" Matthew's gaze darkened. "Not a babysitter. Caregiver. A companion. You'd live in my home, ensure he's comfortable, and be paid generously." Naomi hesitated. She barely scraped by working double shifts at the diner. This could change everything. But working for a billionaire. Her instincts told her it was risky. But then she thought of Elijah, his small hands gripping that towel, his eyes lighting up at pancakes. She took a deep breath. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it." Naomi's new life was nothing like she had imagined. Matthew's mansion was a fortress of glass and steel, perched high on a hill overlooking the city. Everything about it screamed wealth. Priceless paintings, grand chandeliers, rooms so large they echoed. And yet it felt empty. Elijah, however, brightened when she arrived. "You really came," he beamed. She smiled. "I promised, didn't I?" Over the weeks, Naomi became more than just Elijah's caregiver. She became his friend. She took him to the park, read him bedtime stories, and even convinced Matthew to spend more time with him. But the more she got to know Matthew, the more she saw beyond his cold, distant exterior. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was a father who didn't know how to connect with his son. And Naomi, she was falling for both of them. One night, after putting Elijah to bed, Naomi found Matthew in his study. He looked up surprised. "You're still here," he murmured. She swallowed. "I wanted to talk." His gaze softened. "About?" She hesitated. "About you. And Elijah. He needs you, Matthew. More than your money. More than this house." Something in his eyes flickered, pain maybe. "You're right," he admitted. "But I don't know how." Naomi smiled softly. "Start by just being there." And in that moment something shifted between them. Weeks turned into months. Matthew changed. He spent more time with Elijah, learning to love him in ways he never had before. And Naomi. She realized she wasn't just Elijah's caregiver anymore. She was his family. And when Matthew finally kissed her one evening under the soft glow of the mansion's chandeliers, she knew her life had changed forever.